And I kind of had this moment of like, oh, if I'm looking this stuff up, then what are my patients looking up online? Because we all know Dr. Google, right? And we all get frustrated at right. How many patients come in because they have an eyelid twitch and they think they have a brain tumor or something?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ryan Reflects podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Corte, and today I'm super excited to talk to Dr. Joseph Allen, aka Dr. Eye Health, as his online personality and in his consumer education side of what he does. But if you don't know Joey, you kind of been living under a rock because he has been extremely influential in education to consumers as well as doctors in our profession for a number of years. So, Joey, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate just getting the invite to come on. This is, I love this sort of stuff. I love talking, certainly with other professionals in our space, but just about the profession, career, certainly navigating in the social media world is kind of different. So, again, I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, if somebody was living under a rock, what is your kind of elevator pitch about? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of honestly your journey from, let's just say, pre-optometry on into where you are now.
Sure. So again, Dr. Joseph Allen, but my friends all call me Joey. Really, I have a mission to help teach and help inspire people to not only learn about the eyes, vision products, but to ultimately kind of appreciate and protect their eyesight from future vision issues. I finished my formal optometry education from the Rosenberg School of Optometry in 2015, and then I did my residency at the Minneapolis VA Medical Center. After that, I primarily started working in a couple different private practices in Minnesota, where I'm originally from. And then kind of my journey down this crazy kind of different career path, I think started in 2017. So about a year after I finished residency, I had started seeing patients, and there was like this frustration I hit. I think going out of the VA system and suddenly having to take insurance and realizing, oh my goodness, like I only have a few minutes to see every patient. And a lot of the concepts of eye care that I was really passionate about and wanted people to understand about glaucoma or diabetes, or even just the simple things like their glasses, and helping somebody understand what type of glasses are ultimately going to help them see the best, or even contact lenses. And I was facing those challenges of, I don't have time to explain everything to my patient. I also don't have the time or even visuals to show my patient so that they can understand what anti-reflective is.
Yeah.
It's like,
100%.
Right. Something so basic to us that we understand. And there's so many other nuances in that, but I got kind of frustrated with it. And around that time, I bought my first house, which was an old fixer-upper from the 1960s. And I'm a very visual person, as a lot of people are. And so I'd try to fix something. I'd call my dad. He knows how to fix everything, right? So I'd call him. Just like, Dad, how do you fix this? How do you do this? And it was very hard for me to understand what he's verbally telling me to do. So I would just, hey, I know what to do. I go on YouTube, type in how to, fix a hole in my wall, how to fix my lawnmower or something. And I'd watch a 10, 15 minute video and be like, I know exactly how to fix that hole in my drywall. I know what products to buy. I know the technique. Like, I'm all set. And I kind of had this moment of like, oh, if I'm looking this stuff up, then what are my patients looking up online? Because we all know Dr. Google, right? And we all get frustrated at, right? How many patients come in because they have an eyelid twitch and they think they have a brain tumor or something? And so I looked up at the time on YouTube, and the few videos I found, most of them were not done by eye doctors. They're done by some guy in his garage, or they're learning how to put contacts in from like a 14-year-old girl who at the end of the video was trying to sell people colored contacts made in Indonesia with a DK over T of like 8.4. And
Jeez.
yeah, it was scary. And then of course people making like just outrageous claims about optometry or eye doctors in general, not without any insight of what we do, what we know, what we went to school for. And so I was like, okay, we have to be here. And I knew at the same time that how much work it would take to try and get like a higher organization in our industry to show up. And I felt that even if there was, let's say one of our industry partners showed up online, and some of them are, the problem is that it would come off so corporate, like a corporate feel. It would be like a commercial that nobody would pay attention to, right? You just kind of mute it and not be interested in it. So I'm like, okay, but I can show up as a person and a doctor and be like my best friend. Just, hey, let me explain what's going on so that you have just a little bit of knowledge. So when you go into the optical, you have an insight of your own of what to be looking for. And same thing for seeing the eye doctor. And so I kind of had that idea. And so beginning of 2018, I built up enough courage to say, nope, I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest in it, and we'll see how it goes. And that's kind of where my journey began.
Well, and we're better off for it as a profession, and what the leap of faith that you took. And I remember at one point, I remember you saying, it just, I tune into your stuff all the time. And one time you said, it was like 6 months in and I almost gave up because I didn't feel like I saw, the impact that I was hoping for. And all of a sudden I, reinvested in some training on it and did a video ranking academy through a third party, all these different things that you took. We'll come to that in a second, but I want to take a step back. So you went from Minnesota to Texas.
Yeah.
How in the world did you go from Minnesota to San Antonio? We're talking about South Texas, right? So
yeah.
What did that look like?
So originally, I didn't even, the time Rosenberg School of Optometry was not on my radar. I was not planning on going there, but my undergrad was done at St. John's University in the College of St. Benedict's, which is a private Catholic university in Minnesota. And I'm not Catholic, but they have a really good reputation for just having an awesome education program. It wasn't in my hometown, but it wasn't too far away. So great education. And one of my I was in the pre-optometry club, right? And one of the other students, shout out to Dr. Miranda, her last name was Lipinski. Now she switched it with her marriage, but she had interviewed at Rosenberg. And when she came back from the interview, she's like, Joey, I actually think you would love this school. And so I said, okay, it's worth it. Let me put it down. Went down, interviewed, and they knew who I was. They knew like what I valued. They knew so many little things. Like they did their research of who I was, and I just felt comfortable. And of course, going from Minnesota, where it's like a blizzard, to San Antonio in November when it's like still 90 degrees.
Yeah,
I was
it's enticing.
Like, yeah, I'm like, I could study here. So,
wow.
At the time, I'll be very honest, it was a new school at that time. I was part of the third graduating class. I didn't realize or know how new this school was, and I didn't quite conceptualize like the gravity of that, especially when it comes to like getting that they have that, what is it, accreditation. Like I didn't fully understand that, or some of the criticisms that come along with a new school. And I think I can't talk bad about it because I had a great education. I performed very well there. I had amazing professors. I scored killer on my board scores.
Which
did
huge,
residency, everything. So for maybe young students, who are at a new school, my thought is like, you know what? I know there's doctors, like in any educational institution or even in just pre-med, getting it at any college, there are some people who think, oh, the Ivy Leagues, they've been around forever, they're better than the other schools. It's like, you know what? You put in the time, you put in the education, you get good, you have to put in your own work. You can have a great education at no matter, even if it's a newer school. So that's something just in retrospect, it's kind of interesting to have gone through that and learned that.
Well, it's, and I live in North Carolina and we have two brand spanking new schools coming here. So it's interesting to put it into perspective that way. When I applied and it was 2008, we didn't have Optomcast. Did they have Optomcast when you were applying or no?
I think we did.
Okay.
It sounds familiar. It's been a while.
It's the online portal where you can essentially put together your application.
Yeah.
And then in doing so, you can send it out to a number of schools very quickly and efficiently and effectively. Well, I'd have to look up when that actually came to market. But like I remember going on the website, requesting information and getting all of these folders in the mail and putting them all over my bed and like looking at them like, wow, I could go to Florida or California, or it was exciting, right? But I you don't know what you don't know as somebody on the pre-optometry journey in accreditation and board scores and how critically important it is to understand that, but also the clinical experience you're going to get and the extern rotations and how the school, what does that leadership look like? And so with two new schools coming to my state, I'm excited to have an optometry school and now two in our state because I love how much energy optometry students and new graduates bring to our profession. But it's very interesting to me because I could easily see you land in a school that's not too far like ICO or IU. But you're like, you know what? I was motivated. Let's take that leap of faith. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool, Joey.
it worked out great for me. I have to give credit to just amazing professors who inspired me, who pushed me, and then just having the resources to study and push myself. I think really that's where my success in optometry school came from. But,
Did you have during your optometry school and obviously you went and did a residency, did you have any inkling of like, hey, I want to start creating content? Was there ever that bug where you're like, I could do this, I have the personality, I have the that drive? Or was it just something that kind of really sparked in clinic?
no, funny enough, I didn't even have a smartphone until I finished residency in 2016. I have always been a tech nerd. Like in high school, I was part of the AV club and part of the computer club. Really, it's just I loved to play video games and I liked watching movies and I liked connecting all the cords to build a computer, that sort of thing. But I never was into content creation, never had an idea around that. But around the time that I did have this concept of like, it'd be so cool if this was if there was a TV show about eye care. We had a student at one of the eye clinics I'd worked at called the Pinecone Vision Center in Sartell, Minnesota. So shout out to them. They have 4 to 6 students every semester basically, and
Okay.
one of the students' parents sent us an email. All the providers like, hey, as like a graduation gift, we want this student to have like a montage of all their mentors saying like, hey, congratulations and all this stuff. And so the other doctors took a long time for them to like set up their camera and just hit the record button, and they were all self-conscious about it. And I was just like, and then just kind of put on like this acting face and just threw it out there. And one of the other doctors, Dr. Simmons, he was like, wow, you did that really, really well and really easy. You have a real good charisma for that. And then it kind of that him saying that honestly gave me a little bit of boost of courage to kind of decide, okay, I'm gonna see how this works. But
Well, that's incredible, and
yeah,
and also it gives you energy, man. I can tell every time I see what you're doing, and content creation takes a lot of time and energy, but certain types of content, especially the feedback when you get positive feedback, like "Wow, you really changed my life," or "I had no idea," or "I learned so much." And we'll get into more about the consumer versus doctor side of the educational component. It fuels you. But I want to step back to so you finished up RSO and you were at that pinnacle your fourth year and you said, you know what, I'm going back to the Midwest. What did that look like in opting to do a residency versus going and just jumping straight out into clinical practice? How did that decision come to mind?
so it actually went even back to my first year of optometry school.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know that residency was a thing for optometry. I have to admit, I think I was pretty ignorant about like the true course of optometry, like the options and how the profession worked. But I just knew I wanted to be the best doctor I could be. That was it. And so when I got to optometry school, the first week of like orientation, and I'm meeting all my professors, and I find out, oh, they did this thing called a residency. Oh, it's an extra year where you basically get paid table scraps, but
Yeah.
you get to basically master and get thrown some really insane cases, and you get pushed. I'm just like, oh, well, if that's going to make me a better doctor, I guess I'm doing an extra year then. So I kind of bought into it and just accepted it starting off. And then as I kind of thought more about it and thought, okay, is there a specialty I want to get into? Um, I started weighing kind of the pros and cons of it, and I kind of went into it with this dream that, hey, I would learn a subspecialty in like cornea contact lens or ocular disease, and at the very least, I would be more competitive to get a position and maybe even get paid a little bit more. Um, or on, who knew how life was going to go, it would give me an easier option to get hired to teach at a school if that was ever what I wanted to do. So that's kind of how the mentality I went into it. And I knew I wanted to go back to Minnesota because my girlfriend at the time, now ex-wife, but we were both from Minnesota. She wanted to go back to be closer to friends and family, and so that's why we went back to Minnesota.
Yeah, so there was a draw, and it's, what I can already tell about you and what I've known about you is you dive into the details, man. You like to think and you like to really get into topics. And so when you went into optometry, just like I think a lot of people, we don't know the full profession at large. We don't realize how much of a legislative profession it is, how important it is, state by state scope of practice and board operation guidelines, insurance companies, all of these facets. And so you took the information that you had and you made the best possible decisions that you could have. I did a residency as well. And so when I was at that tipping point, I had a mentor of mine over at the Salisbury VA Medical Center, and she looked at me and she said, I feel like you're one of those individuals that likes to take your learning to the next level, but also you want to keep the door open for the people that really, you know, do a residency and go down that pathway. And so you can't get into academia, or it's harder if you haven't done a residency. And certain positions, residencies keep those doors open. So really interesting that was part of your journey. You moved back to Minnesota, you took the private practice job, and you were finding, like me, educating patients in the finite period of time that we have to the level that we maybe are comfortable with is a huge challenge. And that the internet resources and tools, and I tried to create a bunch of content and do it, but I didn't even know what I was doing. I took some advice from friends, like, hey, look off camera, like as if you're doing an interview style. No, YouTube is a talk to the camera model, right?
Mhm.
And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So as you embarked on the YouTube journey, and for those listening, you make it look so easy and effortless. What did those first 6 months to a year look like, Joey? Like, honestly, because now you have, over 1 million followers on YouTube. You are uberly successful. I mean, just crazy success in the content creation world and the educational world for consumers. But what did those first 6 months to a year look like? And what can listeners learn about that?
Well, this is all. I love for all that you said, Ryan. So thank you, and also and thanks again for this opportunity. This is kind of cool to share some of this little bit more behind the scenes of this story, because it's. I guess I don't talk about it as much, but for as easy as it seems, like if you watch content, you're like, wow, it looks so easy and effortless. There is insane amount of not just work,
Yeah.
premeditation, strategy. Um, there's so many endless hours put into preparing to make these videos, then shooting the videos. And that's not even talking about like the mental battles that I've had to face, like psychological battles dealing with things, whether that be mustering up the energy to have actually have the energy to be on camera, or the courage to post something that may upset people, or fear that you maybe aren't doing it quite right. Maybe there's a better way. Perfectionism can set in.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of other things I can talk about, but to kind of go back and answer your initial question of what was going on that first year, I actually spent 6 months of just research before I even started the first video.
Wow.
Because I didn't know how to use a camera. I didn't know how to do editing. I didn't know different camera lenses, how that would affect things. I didn't understand audio. Didn't know editing. Didn't even have a name. I was so lost. So I just had this kind of mission of like, no, we need like a TV show about eye care. We need to have this message out. And so as of a New Year's resolution, I started going online, typing in on YouTube, like, how do I start a YouTube channel? How do I buy a camera? What camera should I buy? How do I use it? So I basically had to teach myself for 6 months. And in that, not only learning and buying the devices and all the cameras and trying to set things up and play around with it and get the settings right.
Yeah.
I was also strategizing, okay, what do I even want to talk about? How do these videos connect to each other? How do I even post it? How do I actually use the YouTube interface? And so I spent about 6 months just kind of, I'm still working 5-6 days a week in the clinic at that time, and just trying to figure things out on the side and telling my friends and the workers about it. And they're all just kind of like, okay, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
And then I spent probably a good month or two. Like, if you go back to the older videos, I had this like animation with a 4-opter and like this logo and
Oh yeah, I remember all that.
and
Yeah.
different music. And so people don't know, I actually had to buy that animation. I had to learn a different software, Adobe, not After Effects, Adobe After Effects. I had to learn
It's
new
a hard
software.
software too. That's a really hard software.
They use that for major motion pictures. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's hard.
I had to learn just the 1% of that to just edit that animation. I had to buy rights to the music. And I just getting that little animation took me like a month or two. And then I finally said, okay, well, here's 2 or 3 videos. Let's go make those, edit them. That takes forever. Learning the editing software takes forever. And finally had the courage to be like, okay, I'm going to post this couple of videos and we'll see what happens. And so that first video went up in July of 2018. And that was on like tips to buy sunglasses. I personally love sunglasses, and I kind of nerd out about them and collect them. And
why not? Right? I mean, sunglasses are awesome. So
yeah,
that's a great first video.
Yeah, and it's July, so I'm like, okay, here's tips on colors and polarization and brand qualities and things like that, and backside anti-reflective to look for, which still baffles me how many companies are like, we got this new brand of sunglasses, and they send them to me, and I look at them, and I'm just instantly, oh, there's no backside AR. What the hell are you guys doing? That's my initial thing I look at, just to see where their bar of quality is. Do they even have a backside AR? Anyhow, that first year, like you kind of pointed to earlier, I posted for like 2-3 months, and I had 16 subscribers, and it was all my friends and a few people from work, and just no views. Nobody's watching. Even if you went to the YouTube search bar, you typed in anything, even just the name Dr. Eye Health or whatever the name of the exact name of the title of the videos, they wouldn't show up. You'd have to scroll like 3-4 pages down to find them. And I had felt defeated because I was working, again, 5-6 days a week and doing this in the evening all weekend long. Like, I had a moment in the clinic, one of the first videos I did on like what is anti-reflective. And I remember being at the clinic on a Saturday, and I'm thinking, it's beautiful outside. It's Minnesota in the summer. This is where people should be at the lake. Like, my friends are at the lake. They're going hiking. They're watching a movie. They're hanging out. And I'm here at the clinic on my day off or afternoon off, messing around in front of a camera and lights and saying the same paragraph or couple sentences over and over and over, because I was either thinking I'm not being energetic enough, or I'm being distracted, or I'm saying too many times, or I'm just angry that I didn't say that as well as I hear it in my head. So it took me like 5 hours to shoot like that one video.
I can relate. We're our own worst critics. So, I
Yeah,
mean, I can 100% relate that, and I think we've all had that aha moment like, what am I doing? Minnesota during the summertime, that's like why you live in Minnesota unless you're a snowbird, like, not a snowbird, a snow lover, right? Snowbirds leave. Yeah.
so yeah, that was the struggle at that time, and I did have a moment where I'm like, why am I doing this? But then I had to, like, at the very least, I'm becoming a better speaker. I always pictured myself doing lectures or doing more like speaking engagements with industry. And I just love optometry. So let me just go through these motions. It's just growing pains. And so I kind of stuck with it. And at about that 2-3 month mark, I did have a kind of a mental breakdown. I was talking with one of my good friends on the phone. And he's like, dude, you put a lot of effort into this. You've invested some money because I had to buy all the equipment. He's like, but at the very least, you've learned all these cool skills and, finish the core videos that you have planned. And if you find it's not for you, that's okay. At least you have a cool library of videos you can share with some friends or other or patients. And so I always have to give credit to my buddy Alex for giving me those voices, that just words of wisdom and words of encouragement. And then around October of that first year, October of 2018, one of my videos that it was like the second video I ever made, which was on eye floaters, blew up. There's this one channel on YouTube. It's got like 30 million subscribers called Brightside. And I don't really like them because a lot of their information is misinformation, is not correct at all. But their video on floaters suggested my neck. And so I grew like 2,000-3,000 subscribers over the course of a week. And to me, that was proof of concept. Like, people are actually, one, finding the videos, two, when they're finding it, they're watching the videos. And then the comments just are incredible. The amount of people who are, I guess, vibing with the content and getting value out of it, I was like, amazing. Now, how do I do this again?
Yeah.
So I had some success with that one video kind of by random, but like, why? And how do I figure this out? And so I kept going. And then, like kind of you alluded to earlier as well, I said, okay, I need to invest in mentorship more or less on how to do this. So I found some online coaches who teach YouTube, and took a course by a gentleman named Sean Cannell. He actually teaches YouTube professionally, and they have a business on it. And so I took one of his courses, and that taught me kind of like the core fundamentals of how YouTube works in the back end and how to like strategize, get better clarity on how to build a YouTube channel. So I have that gave me a huge leg up.
Yeah.
Of course, the big change is that healthcare YouTube is very different than I think a lot of other YouTube
Oh my
niches.
gosh. Yes.
So it's been a crazy journey since then, but
Wow.
that's the first year.
Well, a couple of things that I love about that is, anytime anybody starts something new, you have to take that leap of faith. You are very, very intentional about your process. You spent a lot of time researching. You, as you said, you even had to learn a new software to could put together your intro, and that is not easy to do. After Effects, as you reference, is used in Hollywood. It's hard. And then you had to push through some of that discomfort of, why am I doing this? How am I going to make an impact? And you receive some positive praise from a friend, like, hey, just keep doing it. And if you get through that library and you just don't feel impact, hold tight. Like, maybe you need to pivot and you can have it for others. But that's so cool. And so then, you know, these comments come through. I mean, you're a YouTube celebrity, and you don't like to admit that, but I'm going to admit that for you. You are a YouTube celebrity. How in the world do you manage all of the comments and all of the questions and I'm sure you get inquiries that are just beyond measure. How do you navigate all of that, Joey?
Well, of course, it's now at a point where it's like impossible. With being like, I look at some YouTube channels that have teams of 30 plus employees,
Wow.
and they're all doing different jobs, and they're managing not only comments, but they're managing everything else in the business. And it's largely still myself. I have basically 2 part-time assistants now, that we're hoping I can build one assistant into full-time, but it's just like building any other business. I think with the comments, questions, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You try your best, but you can't do it all. So I do have, especially days where I post a video, I do have a power hour. So I spend at least an hour that day answering comments on that direct video. And then
That's
the rest of the
cool.
week, I try to spend time answering any comment on any previous video. You can imagine after 300 some videos and all the comments on every single video coming in through the inbox, you just can't hit them all. Some of them, thankfully people are just saying, hey, thanks, this really helped. Awesome. Give them a thumbs up. Some people give full paragraph questions or full paragraph stories of their own health battles with, having a retinal detachment or something. Some are really emotional. And there's a lot of tough times when people just want free healthcare, and it's like, I can't give that. Like
No.
it's not only a jeopardy for liability reasons, but it's unethical in my opinion, because we know how valuable and how important it is to see a doctor in person and to have a thorough eye exam. And so I try to answer those questions when people are. I'm like, hey, you may have a serious thing. I can't really give more details through comments online. I encourage you to. It's in your best interest to see a doctor in your local area, and I kind of
That was always that was my default. Like, hey, go see a local eye care professional. Like, this concludes part 1 of my conversation with Dr. Joseph Allen. Tune in next week to catch part 2 of our conversation so we can reflect and grow stronger together.